Now I want to talk to you briefly about some of the subject matter that you rap about, because some of it is really deep and very personal as well. You talk about suicide, suicide attempts, drugs, drug use, drug abuse, childhood abuse. How are you so comfortable putting all of this personal experience in your music like that?
You know, my music has always been a form of therapy. And so I guess I usually write, at least if it's a deep song, like the songs you're referencing, I write like no one's gonna hear it. I write like no one's gonna hear it. And because if I write like someone's gonna hear it, I'm not gonna write it at all. And it is therapeutic for me. When you hear these fucking depressed songs of mine, I'm in the studio crying as I'm writing it. I'm going through a horrible week. I'm probably using hella drugs. I'm probably not talking to anybody about how I'm feeling. So all I have is the music, and that's just where I release it. And I guess that's really the answer. It really doesn't go any deeper than that, other than that it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic. And as far as letting people hear it, like I said, I just pretend like nobody's gonna hear it when I write it. And that's the only way that I'm able to write these songs. And I guess like I do talk about it in my interviews. I didn't like to talk about it previously, but as my career has progressed, I've realized that that is one of the most important things about my music and my movement, is that people can relate to me. So I now am more comfortable talking about these things because I know it's gonna help other people. And I know that the people that are listening to my music and maybe just see me as a character, when they see me talk about it in an interview, then they could really see me as a person and relate to it even more and understand it even more, and just really realize that it's not something that I'm doing for the hype. I'm doing it because it really is how I feel, and it really is therapeutic for me.
Has your mother or father listened to your music and said had a conversation, not realizing what you were going through as a youth? Because a lot of times our parents aren't paying attention to us on that level. They're raising us, but they're not really understanding what we're going through day by day. But listening to your music, how have your parents, if they've listened, responded?
My dad has always been really supportive of my music, and my dad, he's a spy. He's gonna watch this interview for sure. So he always spies on everything I do on social media. He always has since I was a kid with the MySpace. And so when I first started making music, I knew he was gonna hear it, and I was like embarrassed for him to hear it because first of all, I was talking shit about him and my music, okay? Second of all, it was really personal, and third of all, I was just embarrassed because I was just starting to make music. And I remember when he first heard it, he brought it up like maybe a week or two after I released it, and he's like, I heard your music on MySpace, and I was like, oh no, he's gonna be pissed. He's like, it's really good. He's like, I'm glad it's good because I would have had to tell you if you sucked. I was like, oh shit. And so he actually recorded my first music video, and he bought me the little piece of equipment that me and Loudon started using when we moved to Seattle. He always comes to my shows, he always wears my merchandise, he always tells people about my music. Like all the time I get messages on Instagram like, oh, I ran into your dad at this restaurant, he showed me your music. And like, so he's always talking about and promoting me. So he's always been really supportive, and I'm really grateful for that. My mom has had a kind of a hard time with this whole thing, though. It's not been the same experience for her. I remember the first time that my mom heard my music, she started crying. She was crying, and she was very upset, and she didn't want to talk about it, and and that was the last time I played my mom my music for a long time. I made sure that she wasn't home when we were recording music. She wasn't home when we were mixing the album. I never was like including her. I would always kind of make sure she wasn't there to hear it, because I knew it upset her, you know. She wasn't like, oh, fuck your music, don't do that either, you know. It was just like, my music, I was talking shit about her too, you know. I wasn't lying, you know. I was just telling what happened to me in my childhood. I guess it would trigger her because I guess she was embarrassed about what happened, you know, which it's fine. Every parent has their problems raising their kids, you know. No, there's no perfect parent, I understand. And like I said, whenever I talk about people in my music, it's not to talk shit about them. It's just because it's therapeutic for me. Like, sorry you're a part of that, you know, and there's no exception in my life. Like, I talk about everybody in my life. And so, yeah, she didn't really like hearing it. And then I remember, like, she would go to, like, a couple of my shows, and then when I would say my lyrics that, like, talking about my mom, I didn't realize this, but she would tell me afterwards, I don't like when you sing those songs about me because people turn around and they look at me at the show. I was like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. And so she didn't really like going to my shows, and she just didn't really like hearing my music, because now I have a lot of music that's not all like depressing, because before my music was like all depressing, you know. Now I have a lot of nice songs, and my mom actually really likes my singing record. My last album, it's called Sometimes I Like to Sing, and I did singing on that, and she actually really likes that record. Like, last time she was singing my lyrics, I was like, oh my God, she knows. That's the first time I've ever heard my mom sing my lyrics in the past fucking 12 years that I've been releasing albums, you know? Because it's just not really her thing. She also doesn't like rap music. She doesn't like rap music, so, you know, so it's been tough for her. And whenever she happens to hear a song where I talk about her, she'll say, I don't like when you talk about me. Why can't you just not talk about me? You know, and I have to tell her, like, sorry, but again, just, it's therapeutic. It's not about you. I'm sorry. It's not an attack on you. Don't listen to it. You know, like, just don't listen to it. But yeah, so she's had a hard time. And then I remember one time I dropped one of my projects, and my brother was listening to it in front of her. My brother Force was listening to it in front of her. And it was a song talking about, like, suicidal thoughts. And he played it, and I was, like, embarrassed to hear it in front of my mom, because obviously it was, like, talking about being suicidal and having suicidal thoughts. And after that, she asked me, she said, you know what, Jordan, I think you really need to get some professional help. I'm really worried about you. And then I was like, yeah, I should. Yeah, but it's kind of been a little weird with my mom. She's happy for me. She's happy for all the success, but she doesn't really like my rap music. Yeah.
I figured that she might have something to say.
Yeah.
But your dad seems to be more open to it, even though you do. I mean, it still reflects on your father just like it does on your mom. Just your mom is taking it a little bit more personal, where your dad, I guess, he's cool with it.
Yeah, my mom's a little more sensitive, and my dad's a little more like, fuck it. You know, I feel like I'm kind of more like my dad in that way. I'm not really like that sensitive of a person. I definitely make music about when I'm feeling sensitive, but in general, I'm not like a person that's like, I'm not always like crying, and I'm not always like, you know, I'm just like, I don't know.
Now, a lot of the suicidal thoughts, I'm assuming, comes from your childhood trauma. But when you moved to Seattle, I don't know if you know this, but the Pacific Northwest of the United States is the suicide capital of America. Seattle, Portland, Washington State, Oregon. Did you have these feelings still up there, and was it more intensified?
So you know what? I'm actually going to debunk that myth. That's actually not true statistically.
Not true.
It's a rumor, because when we moved up there, people started telling us that. My mom was like, no. I was like, well, let's look it up, and it's actually not true. Okay. That's actually never been true.
Never been true.
Never been true.
I could have sworn I looked it up, but
I know
go ahead, educate me.
Yeah. So the number now, after, actually, interesting enough, after COVID, now all the suicide capitals in our country have changed. Because before it used to be, guess what the number one was? Now that you don't know, it's Seattle.
Well, I would say per capita, not numbers. New York City, of course, because they got the most people, but per capita, I would say a dark area in the Pacific Northwest, because it rains all the time.
No, it's Las Vegas. That makes sense, right? When I heard it, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, Seattle and the Pacific Northwest are not even like in the top 5. Like, it's like other places. But to answer your question, I was just always depressed. I've been depressed since I was a kid, so it didn't matter where you put me. I was living in LA in the sunshine, and I was depressed. You know, I've always been depressed since I was a kid. I'm not depressed anymore, and I'm very happy to say that. The past couple years, I've been like a lot more mentally stable. I for sure have moments where I break down, you know, and I get sad, and I, you know, struggle with other things, but I wouldn't say that I'm like chronically depressed anymore. I don't deal with depression. I get very sad, and I might have a mental breakdown, and I might abuse drugs when I'm really stressed, but but I'm not depressed anymore. But I've been depressed since I was a kid, like a really small kid. Like I remember crying all the time when I was a kid, and like I remember being dropped off at school crying, and it was like obviously like my mom was like probably beating the shit out of me, and I was just like really sad about a lot of things. And I remember when I was a kid, when I was like 7, I would like not wear my seatbelt on purpose because I would hope it would crash and I would die, and like little things like that, you know. And I didn't know like really what depression was until I don't know when I discovered that concept. Maybe like in high school or something. But that's when I was probably a teenager, late teenager. But that's when I started realizing like, oh shit, like I'm fucking like depressed. Like this says something's wrong here. And I definitely contribute that to my childhood. And then also, when you're depressed, you're gonna start. Sometimes some people are gonna put themselves in suicidal situations, you know. And what I mean by that is maybe I never have tried to kill myself like myself, but I was kicking it with the gang. I've gotten shot at a few times. I was always getting into fights. I was always abusing drugs. Like I've fallen asleep before not knowing if I was gonna wake up, thinking like, oh fuck, I might die right now, you know, like that. I've had that occurrence. And you know, I also like was always in abusive relationships, and just basically point being that I would find other ways to hurt myself. It was like I think they call it passive suicide. I think that's what the
just putting
term
yourself
is.
in dangerous situations.
Exactly. So I was always like hurting myself in one way or another.
Now, how much do you think the drug abuse contributes to that, or do you think you can be completely sober and still have those same thoughts?
I will say that over the past like 5 years, I think it's been, I've been experimenting with sobriety, and after doing it a few times, right now I'm actually 5 months sober right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Completely sober, no drugs, no alcohol.
Do you put marijuana in that category, or you exclude?
Marijuana is in that category, and I hate when people say weed is not a drug. I'm not against drugs.
That's why I'm asking. When you say no drugs, you're also saying no marijuana.
I'm also saying weed.
Okay.
Weed is a drug. I hate when people say weed's not a drug, it's a plant, it's a drug. There's something wrong with that. Like, and I'm not against weed. Like, I love weed. You know, I'm just not smoking right now.
What about alcohol?
Alcohol, for sure, it's a drug.
But
yeah.
when you say sobriety, are you putting alcohol to the side as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sober from all drugs except for caffeine. I drink coffee. I drink caffeine. But every other drug, I'm sober from. And I'm not drinking at all. I've been completely sober from those things for 5 months.
Thanks for watching StreetTV.net. If you're not subscribed, please hit that button below and click the bell to receive alerts and notifications. Feel free to comment below so you can give us your feedback, and be sure to watch the 2 related episodes to the right. If you want to support this platform or follow us on social media, visit the links in the description. And thanks for watching StreetTV.net.